Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, our guest on Anatolian Dispatch is Mehmet Yeğin. He is a visiting fellow at the Americas Research Division of the, and pardon my bad German pronunciation, Stiftung of Wissenschaft und Politik in Berlin, and he works on American politics and Turkish foreign policies. He has studied in the United States at the University of Cincinnati, and he has his PhD from Bilkent University on a thesis, Why Turkey Joined or Avoid Joining US-led military coalitions. He was engaged in research at the Ankara-based International Strategic Research Organization, USAC, from 2008, and he was the director of the organization's Center for American Studies from 2012 to 2016. He has co-edited 4 volumes of interviews on Turkish foreign policy series at USAC. He has also published reports on US elections, US-Turkish relations, Afghanistan, and he's done analysis for both the German Marshall Fund and for the Brookings Institute, for whom he is working on a chapter in a forthcoming book that should be out later this summer. So note his name and do some searching, and you can get all of his publications. He is also going to have a article coming out very shortly in the Turkish Policy Quarterly, which I would recommend to you. He has made commentary on AFP, The Washington Post, ABC News, The Voice of Russia, Deutsche Welle, BBC, and Haberturk, CNN Turk, TRT, and other Turkish broadcasting channels. So we're very glad to have you with us today. Mehmet, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
So you are in Berlin, and I am in Philadelphia, the birthplace of liberty and freedom known as America, the cradle of freedom, as we say. So that brings us together with Turkey as a fellow NATO member. We've got the United States, Germany, and Turkey, who I believe, in terms of population within NATO members, are the 3 most populous NATO members, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what I'd ask is if you could, maybe just do a quick look at how's it going between NATO and Turkey now? How's the relationship? And then maybe we'll get into some questions off of that. Go ahead. Thanks.
Well, Turkey-NATO relations has certain problems currently, which is, I think, that the primary problem about Turkey-NATO relations is the cohesion between the alliance members, particularly between Turkey and Greece, and recently with France. This is an important cohesion problem, and Turkey also has problems with the partners of NATO, particularly the partners that are part of Mediterranean dialogue, like Egypt, Israel, and also another partner of NATO, UAE, United Arab Emirates. So Turkey is blocked, for instance, certain cooperations between NATO and Israel, and so there is this problem of cohesion and the tension between the NATO members, which is a big problem if you think that Russia is trying to put a foot on Mediterranean and to expand its position in the navigation of Mediterranean. Then we will see the extent of the problem. But I think the biggest problem about NATO-Turkey relations is that actually Turkey has a huge potential of contribution to NATO in terms of diplomacy, in terms of capacity building in the Middle East, and in terms of this being an important stable country, a source of stability in the Middle East, which is pretty much not the case for now. And I think that's the biggest problem, because the both NATO and Turkey is losing this partnership, this favorable partnership that is helping to the Middle East stability as well, particularly in terms of diplomacy. Because when we look at in late 2000s, Turkey was taking the positions of mediator or facilitator between Iran and US, trying to do at least, or Israel and Palestinians and Israel and Syria, trying to put channels between Syria and the West. And now we see that actually Turkey is very, very alone in the Middle East. Turkey is very isolated, and Turkey is not in position to fulfill this position, this contribution to NATO, and for particularly for its own interests as well. So and this is really related with the in the last decade, the change of Turkish foreign policy that is focused too much on Turkish domestic politics, and the change and the Turkey's change of Turkey's direction from the West, from rule of law and democracy into a support system for particularly a leader in the country. So that's the change in this perspective on foreign policy also changed Turkey's position in the Middle East and also with the relations with NATO.
So let me ask about this. There's been some recent indications coming out of the presidency, out of the Aksaray, that President Erdogan is interested in kind of, I don't know if you would say re-energizing, maybe just simply recalibrating relations with Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Do you see any sort of movement similar to trying to improve relations with different NATO member states, some that you mentioned, Greece, France, or others, from your perspective there in Germany?
Well, it's a kind of too little too late, actually. Why? Because when we look at the core of the problems between France and Turkey is pretty much Libya. And when we look at how how we came to this point is that Turkey's relations with Israel deteriorated, Turkey's relations with Egypt deteriorated, and at some point we see that Ankara saw that the only way to assert its position in the Eastern Mediterranean is to have a deal with Libya in terms of demarcation of these economic exclusive zones, and this caused a bigger problem between France and also Greece. So now we see that actually with the change of the U.S. administration, with the incoming Biden administration and its position on Mediterranean, actually Turkey's maneuverability space is not very good. It's this Libya move is not enough for Turkey to make its point now. So it pushed Turkey a little bit to restart the relations with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and because there's no maneuverability space for Turkey. And I believe that actually for Turkey-Saudi Arabia relations, it's more promising than Egypt because of the US resuming the talks with Iran for GCPOA. That may be a kind of pushing for Saudi Arabia to resume relations with Turkey, and maybe that can trigger a further cooperation with Egypt. But currently, it's a kind of just a very short term, a very tactical move to survive in terms of the position, in terms of Turkey's positions in the Mediterranean, and a short-term application means that actually in the future, if the circumstances change, then these relations may go fall again or deteriorate again. So, so it's not a stable kind of move. And for the Europe, I think that the main understanding is, and this is not with France, this is with Germany. The Turkish administration's position is that now that the Biden administration is more focusing on this values, democracy, human rights, and so that the chemistry between Erdogan and Trump is not there yet. So how the Turkey can move is to kind of create a divergence between Europeans and the US, primarily between Germany and the US, and move forward. And I believe that most of these talks between Turkey and Greece is based on the idea of bringing Germany closer to Turkey to create such divergence between Germany and the US, to create certain maneuverability space for Turkey. And is that stable too? I don't think so. And the European Union position is too pragmatic for a normative power in the region, because European Union should be the party that is vocal about the democracy, human rights, and with the last visit, we are talking about this Sofagate problem rather than what we should be talking about. So sitting a place or not, it's not the core issue between Turkey-EU relations, and it shouldn't be.
What, you know, one of the things you mentioned was about the change in the United States. And of course, there has been, you know, a significant change in domestic policy in the United States. In foreign policy, in some ways, it's a shift of focus. I mean, as you will remember, in relation between the United States and Turkey, Donald Trump pursued what, I mean, a lot of people called it America first, but actually I called it Americans first, in that, at least with Turkey, for example, we saw the arrest of Turkish citizens who worked for the American embassy. We saw dual nationals, both Turkish and American citizenship, arrested. And we saw an American missionary who was working in Turkey arrested. The response from the Trump administration differed greatly depending on the, let's just say, Americanness of those people. So, you know, the embassy employees who were Turkish citizens barely got any attention from the White House. I mean, that may sound harsh, but it's true. That's what happened, or what did not happen. Whereas in the case of Pastor Brunson, tariffs were imposed, sanctions against ministers of government. I mean, it was what, in a basketball term, we call a full court press. It was everything. And then in the case of Sherkan Gökçe, if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm trying to remember how he spells it, the NASA scientist, it was somewhere in between. Do you think, are you seeing signs that Blinken as Secretary of State with Biden as president are going to pursue what I would call a much more non-hierarchical approach to foreign relations? In other words, the focus on democracy and human rights, the focus on press freedom, the focus on LGBT, it's a very different focus than what Donald Trump was pursuing in his engagement with other countries, particularly Turkey.
Well, I think that the expectations of Biden administration to fully interest in Turkey and fully active is not realized. And I see a more of a distant administration with Turkey, less interested. And when there is, when the US administration has to say something or act against Turkey, just inform it and move forward. But it's not like a full tension, because it's like the attention of the US administration is pretty much at somewhere else. in these terms, it's different from Trump and Biden administration, because Trump was engaging with Erdogan, and there was this, we talked this, a chemistry between two former businessmen. And actually, if they are disagreed, the tension was really high, like the tariff sanctions, and you see that the Turkish lira is losing value against dollar. But here the disagreement between the Biden administration and Erdogan is bigger than Trump, but we don't see this much ups and downs, because the U.S. administration is not like fully engaged, like fully in position to bring a full punishment or having a very cozy relationship with Erdogan at the NATO meetings. Both of them are not happening. It's a more of distance, tit for tat, or quid pro quo thing. But it's the activeness of the relations, I think, decreased a lot. So in terms of this, I can't see a Biden administration that is fully engaging with Turkey, either for Andrew Brunson or the NASA scientists, maybe for the embassy people, but I don't see that. I think that the nature of the relationship has changed a lot.
Yeah. Do you think what's really going on is there's an expression in English, let them stew in their own juices. In other words, it seems to me that over the last 4 years, President Erdogan lost all the friends of Turkey that were in Congress. I mean, they're still there. There are people who, there are a lot of people who really love Turkey and the Turkish people, but they have such an animus against Erdogan, who they see as a dictator or wannabe dictator, which they also ascribe to Donald Trump. And so between Erdogan's, supposed affinity with Donald Trump and Erdogan's disdain for the protest about human rights and other things from members of Congress, in official Washington, in power right now, he doesn't have a lot of friends. But everybody's kind of trying to figure out this conundrum. How do we communicate to the Turkish people that the United States really wishes to remain engaged with Turkey as a NATO ally, partner, friend, and with the Turkish people, but we have a lot of discomfort with Erdogan? I think that's what the White House is trying to do. I don't know whether they're going to be able to pull it off. But you mentioned earlier, before we began, you mentioned some interesting polling data, which maybe we now segue into, what's the future prospects for Turkish-US relations and Turkey-NATO relations, given the domestic politics and where it might go over the next couple of years?
Well, let me start first with Turkey's relations, or Erdogan relations with Congress first. I want to talk something about that, because that's very important. I don't believe that Turkey had too much friends in Congress before, but the issue was that the Turkey was an important country for the U.S. administration, and Turkey had certain cards. So we reiterated a lot, like Turkish strategic position, Turkey's strategic importance, but I think pretty much Erdogan lost Turkey's strategic cards against the U.S. administration, like Russia or Middle East, or sharing values, and these cards now Erdogan does not. Yes, has less. Of course, he has less friends in Washington D.C., but also he has less arguments to put on the table to say that, okay, I want this, and you shouldn't do that, and you should do this. Because previously, I remember that from State Department, from the administration, there was these letters going to Congress to protest or prevent the Armenian genocide bills, which is not happening at all. And actually, this with the Biden announcement, it's the last nail in the coffin. That's what I can say, because the administration has nothing to lose. When the U.S. administration is punishing Turkey, there is nothing to lose, and that's the problem. More of than having less or more friends. So that's another point. In terms of future of Turkey, I believe that the polls are really interesting. I see a poll that's coming from Istanbul Economics Research that shows that actually Erdogan's possible counterparts or the people that are going to compete with Erdogan, which we don't know which one yet, like the Istanbul mayor, Mansur Yavaş, we see that he has 14.4% ahead of Erdogan. And Ekrem İmamoğlu, Istanbul mayor, he is nearly 12% ahead of Erdogan. And even Meral Akşener, she is 6.3% ahead of Erdogan, which was never the case, which is unprecedented, because we were seeing that whoever is against Erdogan, whether he was in the center right or left, the percentages were playing between 29% to 35%. And now we see that Mansur Yavaş is getting 52%, and Ekrem İmamoğlu 51%, and in comparison, Erdogan's vote is playing between 38 to 39. And I think that's a very huge difference. And I think that should say something to us about 2023 elections and a possible change in Turkey, because the trends are not in favor of Erdogan. Economy is really not in good position. And we see that Erdogan is pretty much focusing on supporting the big companies and tourism in Turkey, which is pretty much in order to do that, he has to shut down the country, which is hurting the lower class, which is actually at the same time Erdogan's voting base. And right. He doesn't have these funds that he had previously. We were talking about the helps to the social helps, to social funds or that are given to the lower class, which is not there because of the economic situation in Turkey. And coronavirus, people are asking for the vaccination, and Turkey is brought some of them, but could not maintain it, and that's a very big frustration for people as well. And the demographics is changing. And I think that's the biggest problem of Erdogan, because he can convince the elderly people that are previously voted for him, but now they are ambiguous or they're not sure about whether they should vote for him or not. Erdogan cannot convince the young generations to vote for him. They are pretty much against him, and their numbers are rising year by year. So the demographics is changing against Turkey, and I think that's an important picture in here. We have to see, to evaluate Turkey-U.S. relations or Turkey's NATO relations as well.
I think one of the things that involved in, I mean, you mentioned the fact that, and it's absolutely true, of course, that Erdogan previously was able to play not just with the Trump administration, but the Obama administration and the Bush administration, the geostrategic importance of Turkey to get members of Congress, even if they weren't friendly towards them, to go to the White House and say, look, ease up on Turkey, we need Turkey. And also unspoken is the large number of people in the foreign policy national security realm, whether they were in uniform or not, whether they were in the government or out in the think tanks, they would also make the same argument. Turkey's too important to lose. But I think you're making a point that I actually made, was that the perception in the current White House is there's nothing to lose. In other words, there are other options to what benefits Turkey can provide in a national security sense to the United States. And it was always that national security element that Erdogan could use, and so it's interesting to see. This is pure speculation, but I'd like you to speculate a bit. Is it possible that one of the reasons people in the current White House and also members of Congress, in addition to the fact that they don't feel that losing Turkey, in a sense, in quotation marks, losing Turkey, that there isn't much to lose at this point, because there are other options. There's developments between Israel and the Arab states and so forth and so on. And the whole issue of the Eastern Mediterranean, which we haven't touched on, and I think we're going to run out of time to touch on that, so we'll have to save that for another one. We'll bring you back. What is it possible that people, I mean, you're very familiar with American politics and the American administrations and how it works. Is it possible they're just saying, you know what, we're going to wait this guy out. We're going to wait, the polling's bad for this guy. We're going to wait till the next presidential elections and see what we get. And, we can kick the can down the road for the next 2 years, and then there will be elections. And if all goes well, we won't have to deal with this guy anymore. If they are thinking that way, is that a good strategy?
Well, I don't know what's talked behind the doors in the Washington, because I'm not there, and I don't have direct connection with people that are how they're thinking and how they are planning about Turkey. But my sense five cents on the issue is that actually the perception about we should focus on Asia Pacific. That's the main idea. And now the idea of losing Turkey is not important because not of alternatives in the Middle East. But I think that the idea of Middle East is a very important issue for the US, has decreased a lot. That's not the given importance like in early 2000s or 2010s. It's changed a lot. So I think that the US administration has this position that if we stay distant, if we minimize the dealings with Turkey, we can get what we want. We can cooperate on certain issues, and we can compartmentalize, and we can raise our voice about the issues that we are not happy with. And I heard that there are some statements of Antony Blinken and also the National Security Advisor, that they were saying that actually the Russian approach to Turkey is successful. So we should pursue how Russia deals with Turkey. So this way of dealing with Turkey brings the idea that not to get involved a lot and stay distant and raise points and be clear about what the U.S. administration wants. And I think they're pretty much doing that. Are they waiting for Erdogan to go? I think it's they do not have that much time, because Biden administration will remain in power to 2024, and Erdogan there will be an election in 2023. So what they are going to do in this 1 year, and which is pretty much half of it will be like if they win or they lose, it will change the amount of the power of the administration. Right. So I'm not sure they're waiting for Erdogan to go, but I'm sure that they have this distant approach, and they believe that the amount of Turkey can harm on the US policy in the Middle East or in Europe diminished. So it's not very important. So that's the perspective that I'm sensing from Berlin, from Germany,
Right. So
not
I
in
mean,
Washington, D.C.
what you're saying is that not only the United States, but maybe Germany, France, others are probably going to go towards not completely ignoring Turkey slash President Erdogan, because I want to keep that distinction between Erdogan and the entire 85 million Turks of Turkey. I want to keep it at least in people's minds a little bit. But you're saying, in a sense, follow the Russian model. Cooperate where you can cooperate. Be competitors where you're going to be competitors, regardless of who the president is. And look for areas of cooperation. Exploit those as much as possible. But given the diminished importance of the Middle East, at least in U.S. policy, not so true with EU, because of the whole issue of refugee flows and all that. But certainly for the United States, Turkey is far less central to its foreign policy because the U.S. focus on the Middle East has diminished. And that translates into less of a need for Turkey as a thoroughly engaged partner. Okay.
Exactly. And I believe that actually in terms of the EU position, EU is kind of capitalizing on the idea of the Biden administration changed the dynamics. So they're really focusing on getting what they really want, like declining the tension in the Eastern Mediterranean, getting a better deal about the refugees with Turkey, and they are focusing on them and they are getting them. And in terms of Turkey's democracy and human rights, I believe that these parties are also hesitant because that when they actually raise their voice about these issues, it kind of backfire.
Right.
And that creates somehow this backlash in the Turkish public opinion. There is a rally effect of being united against this criticism towards Turkey because the public reaction is very nationalistic. And
right.
And I believe that actually doing it a little smart, but because there are ways to do that. There are ways to facilitate a free debate in Turkey, a freedom of speech or promotion of freedom of speech in Turkey, which will help a lot for Turkish democracy rather than just outward criticizing, like you're a country that is committing human rights violations and we are bringing these sanctions because of this, and we are bringing that sanctions because of that. And particularly, I believe that the moves of both the US and EU about Greece, Armenia, and the Kurdish issue is really harmful in terms of Turkey-Western relations. So I think they can be smart. They can still promote democracy in Turkey without intervening or without making a big footprint about their positions on the issues, and that will help a lot in terms of Turkey's democracy, because the debate in Turkey is pretty much not there. Of course, there is this polling numbers showing something, but freedom of speech is not there in Turkey, and the opposition is not in position to explain their projects, their perspectives on matters, because they don't have the proper channels to do that. And actually, both EU and the US may certainly help for that, but I don't see that's coming.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. But what I'd like to say is that we should do this again and focus on a number of the internal things that you mentioned. I mean, I'm fascinated by the notion of it's possible that Erdogan is losing some of his base, some of his, traditional base because of the economic situation, the response to the pandemic, the demographic change in the country. That's not losing his base, but it's changing the the weight of his base, and between, you know, a change in the weight of his base and a change in the attitude of some members of the base, you know, that could be, you know, very interesting. So I'd really love to pursue that in another discussion, maybe in a few weeks, if that would suit you.
Well, maybe.
Okay. Well, very good, Mehmet. Thank you very much. I'm gonna. There's a little. Sometimes there's a glitch. So when I pause it, and to make sure that the recording is captured properly, I'm just going to sign off, and I'll be in touch. And thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.